Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. Today's guest is Paula Barnes, a traveler, a travel creator, podcast host, and expert storyteller behind Truly Expat Travel. She has spent nearly 2 decades living across Asia, raising her family overseas while building a global mobile lifestyle. Now a relatively young empty nester, Paula shares real experience-led insights on expat life, travel, and what it looks like to reinvent yourself through different life stages. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on. Hello.
Okay, so how did living in multiple countries change the way you actually travel today?
I guess living in different countries has made me realize that I think deep down we're all the same. I've become a lot more patient. I've understood that each place that I've lived in, or each place that I've traveled to, has its pros and cons. And I think we all just need to accept that people do things differently in other countries, and we just need to accept and respect those differences.
Paula, what is meaningful travel? Explain to us what meaningful, immersive travel look like in real life.
I think these days people try to travel to 100 countries in 100 days sort of thing. It's quite fast. It's quite, ticking a lot of boxes. I think for me, it's the complete opposite. It's about slow travel. It's about really taking time to, immerse yourself in the culture of the people and the rituals and the beliefs and, really experiencing off the road or off the track kind of villages or cities or towns, and really getting to know the country rather than just ticking some boxes and trying some food.
All right, Paula, thank you so much. So, how can travelers slow down and experience a destination more deeply without over planning?
I think when we visit places, or I think when we book trips, we should be looking at longer periods in certain towns rather than, if you've only got a week to travel, instead of trying to cover a lot of ground, why don't we just put in a place and discover it slowly? Drink the food or eat the food that the locals eat, or, head out and, okay, sure, you need to go and look at the tourist spots, but why don't you spend a day just venturing out and wandering around the towns and having a look at the sites slowly, if that makes sense.
What are the most underrated countries or regions you have lived in or traveled through?
The places that I've lived in, well, I've only ever lived in Asia, so I've just literally moved from Singapore back to Hong Kong, and I'm so sorry. I'm not hearing the question very well, breaking up, and I can only hear half of it. So are you asking me what countries I've lived in or where I've traveled to? Where I've traveled to? Okay, well, to be honest, I've traveled to like 60 something countries. So I've pretty much traveled a lot through Asia and a lot through Europe. I'm from Australia, so traveled extensively through Australia. I've just come back from the US, so I'm lately been doing a lot of travel through the US and the Middle East. So yeah, I just think that travel broadens your horizons, I think that travel creates not just memories, but it changes you in some way, like I went to Bhutan last year, where the country is so peaceful, the hikes are so amazing, and it makes you slow down, and I also went to Morocco last year, which was probably one of my favorite countries I've ever been to, where life there is just so different to anything that I'd experienced. And the countries that I've lived here in Asia, each one of them is so different, I think what we need to do is, appreciate the differences rather than, a lot of people complain about this or that they don't have. But I think that you appreciate those sort of things and appreciate what you do have in your own country.
All right. Thank you so much, Paula. So, if someone wants to redesign their life around travel in midlife, where should they start?
Oh, wow. I think start with start with baby steps. I think I did everything the wrong way around. When I traveled or when I moved overseas 19 years ago, it was back before we had smartphones or we had, social media. So we kind of went blind. We didn't really do enough research. I think if you do enough research and you figure out a country that isn't too different to where you are to start with, and then from there you get a taste of it, and then you can broaden your horizons. I think culture shock is a thing. There's 5 stages of when you move somewhere, and the first one is like culture shock. And so if you can maybe move somewhere or visit somewhere that's not too different to begin with, I think then you just gradually dip your toe in, if that makes any sense.
All right. Thank you so much, Paula. So, can you tell us how this entire travel has shaped you mentally?
I think travel changes you completely. I think what happens with travel is that when you start to realize that there's such a big life out there, but such a big world out there that is so different to where you are and how you've been brought up, I think you become a lot more respectful, a lot more patient, a lot more understanding of different cultures and beliefs. I also think that it opens your mind to, wanting to understand other cultures and wanting to understand other histories, because history does plays a big part in the evolution of different cultures and countries and their beliefs. So, yeah, I think learning about what other people have been through changes you in a lot of ways because you become a lot more patient,
All right. Thank you so much, Paula. So, moving on, what are the biggest shifts you have seen in travel over the past 20 years of living abroad?
The biggest shifts?
Yes.
I would say, well, technology definitely. I think what's happened over the last 19 years is that technology has allowed moving to places become a lot easier. Like before you had to join clubs to meet people or to ask questions, whereas now you've got the internet that pretty much solves a lot of questions, like solves a lot of answers, and it also allows you to be able to translate or speak to people, especially if you move to a country that you don't speak their language. It's much easier now to be able to use Google Translate to be able to get your point across or even ask a question. Or I remember many years ago standing in a grocery store in Taiwan having a bit of a cry because all I wanted to buy was some bread, but apparently the tone that I was using to say bread in Mandarin was incorrect and no one could understand me. So now you don't have those issues, So I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen. But the other thing, I guess, as I get older and now that I'm an empty nester, I don't have that network of friends or automatic friends through the children. I have to make friends on my own. So I have noticed that there's a lot more Facebook groups out there to meet people, or there are a lot of clubs still available so that that you can join, whether it's a sports club or a country. There's a lot of Australian and New Zealand associations that you can join and you can learn new things about the country that you couldn't do back 20 years ago. It was very, very, limited in what there was to offer. But now there's so much more that you can do and that you can meet people. But you need to make sure that that you take the leap of making friends. You can't expect people to come to you. You need to kind of seek these Facebook groups out, or these groups out, or these, sports groups out, so that, you then get to meet people.
All right, so thank you so much, Paula. That was a very wonderful answer. So, what should women over 45 know before they start solo traveling for the first time?
I think we need to just be a little bit more aware. We need to have a bit of street smarts. I think if you start off, if you're going to travel for the first time on your own, I think what you need to do is to maybe have a look at the safety of the country, or even maybe travel close by first and then venture out. I think the first time I ever traveled on my own, after the children left, was to Italy. And so that I felt comfortable because I'm half Italian. So, but even that was daunting and scary. So I think make sure you do your research. Are you going to be staying in an area that is safe to walk around at night, or especially on your own, or should you be staying, somewhere right down in the middle of the city where it's a lot of action? Have a look at the safety. I think safety is number one. And then number two is, is this a country that there are a lot of solo travelers? Because if it's not, why is it not? So do your research. Make sure that you, maybe even the first time you travel to a country that speaks English or your language, so that you feel a little more comfortable. And then the next trip you take, go to a country that doesn't speak or your language. The other thing is maybe go out and do a tour. I think quite often if I'm traveling alone and I'm not doing a 5 or 10 day tour, I'm actually just doing a day tour. They're also really handy to do when you're traveling solo. You can meet people, or you can not just meet people, but then you can find out a little bit more about the city. The on-off buses that they have in other cities as well, that's also a really great thing to do when you're a solo traveler, especially on your first one, and then all the guessing work and the research takes out of it, and someone's showing you, the best highlights of the city. So they'd probably be the main things if you're just starting out.
Okay, thank you so much, Paula. So sorry about that.
Bless you.
How can solo travel after 45 become a confidence building and life expanding experience, other than something to feel?
I think everybody, it doesn't matter how old you are, I think everyone needs to do things that scare them a little bit in life, those butterfly feelings, because it allows you to grow. You don't know you can't do something until you try. Whether it's driving on the other side of the road, whether it's, venturing out to a city that doesn't speak your language, whether it's navigating your way through streets you've never been to. You just have to do, I think once you start doing little things that scare you, they make you stronger. They give you confidence, and you don't have to rely on others to do anything. You can do it all on your own, which is it's a nice feeling. It's that self-confidence that you don't know you need until you get it, or until you have it, or until you kind of go and seek it, if that makes any sense.
Okay, Paula, thank you so much. Thank you for breaking down solo trip after the age of 45. Some people might be scared to take on this trip, but you have made it possible for my audience, those who are listening right now, who might want to, or they lack the courage to do so. So, what is one message you wish listeners will take away from this conversation?
Okay, got it. I would like people to take away that, at the age of 45 or 50 or however age you've rediscovered yourself, I want you to realize that just because, especially if you're a mum, that you've become an empty nester, that doesn't define you. You can change your life very easily. I always say that expats are chameleons, because every country that you move to, you have to change. And I do think that travel does that to you as well. And motherhood does that as well. So once the kids move out and grow up and start their own lives, it's time for you to reinvent yourself. So I'd like everyone to have the courage to go out there and, try travel on their own, or with a friend, or with a group of people, and really discover who they are.
Paula, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. I also want to appreciate my audience because you guys are the real reason why we have this community. Without you guys, yeah, this show will not be possible. So, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
If you wanted to contact me, I've got a website called trulyexpattravel.com. I'm on all social media platforms. I have a podcast called Truly Expat Travel, and I host female trips over the age of 45. So if you wanted to come along on one of those, you can find me on my website. My email and information are on there as well.
All right, Paula, thank you so much once again for coming. And do have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for having me.